Come on in. Come on in. Find a seat up front. Okay. Well, as soon as he come in, I'm going to step down and it'll be y'all party. Come on in. Have a seat. Make sure you guys take those commemorative badges on your seats with you, okay? So you will always remember the Small Business Caucus a few years from now. So take it with you. Take care of it. Do not leave those on the seats, please. Come on in, guys. Let's everybody come towards the front, unless you're pressed. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. Let's do a roll call while we're waiting. So who's from the South? Okay, me too. I'm from South Carolina. Who's from the North? Okay, Midwest. Southwest. The West. Is there anywhere I'm missing? Mid-Atlantic. All right, we have everyone here. Central. Okay, East Coast. All right, so great. We have a whole mixture of people here. Democrats abroad. Yes, save the best for last. Yes. Come on in. Come on in. Pick a seat somewhere up front. There's a special prize waiting for you if you sit up front. And your prize is a great show. Come on in. We have plenty of seats up front. You got to get in the moment pictures, Mark, not me looking smiling. Okay, so if you have anyone at home who's could not be here or don't feel like waiting in line to get in, they can follow the programming on YouTube. So you type in DNC Small Business Council, and it should bring up the live stream link. Yep. And then right here, this takes you to our information about Small Business Council. It tells you about the board, initiatives Small Business Council is working on. Thank you for that. Are you talking about this one? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Come on in, sir. Plenty of seats up front. Good news, folks. The chair is on the escalator. He'll be here shortly, and I mean shortly. How many of you guys are small business owners? Oh, great.
What about an alliance or organization or, okay, activist, legislative?
Want to be a small business owner? State Democratic. Okay. Oh, good. Thank you.
Right. So I can give you a brief up-to-date on what our council has been doing lately. Andrew Lackman, our chair, we have aggressively over the last few years set up small business councils or caucuses in a lot of the key states. We have 2 Northeast organizers for outreach. We discovered Florida, which is terrific. Mark Kennedy is our Southeast organizer. We have someone in Arizona. We are getting hopefully set up in the key swing states. I'm from Texas. We have a congressional district chairs. in the state of Texas, so we've been growing a lot. And now I am going to introduce Andrew Lackman, our chair.
Thank you. Sorry for some of the delays there. What is that? If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Anyway, thank you very much for coming to our second day of programming for the Small Business Council. Just a quick background, we were founded in 2012, originally thought of by then Governor Tim Kaine and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who succeeded him as DNC chair. There was definitely a feeling that we needed to reach out more to small business. As you know, Republicans have been talking for a very long time with the lie that they care about small business. We know they care a lot about big business, but when it comes to the issues that really affect our community, access to capital, protection from large companies, can you say Walmart, as an example, Republicans will always choose big business over small business. So we as a community needed to reach out. And in other areas, whether it's, as we're going to talk about today, innovation, and finding a way to promote innovation in a way which doesn't lead to crises, which the Republicans frequently like to create by, through their policies. Or I would also say, when it comes to issues around investment, mentoring, the Democrats are consistently the friends of small business much more than the Republicans are. But you have to answer these lies, and you have to create safe spaces. So we started in 2012 with 2 state caucuses. We had the Virginia caucus and California. We now stand with 14. We have expanded, we cover the entire West Coast, Washington, Oregon, and California, Arizona, as well as you saw, Texas. Into the South, Florida has just chartered with their state, as well as South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, DC, New Jersey, and Michigan is also on its way back online as well. So these are just a couple of the organizations. Each one has really interesting programming. Washington State trains candidates about how to talk to small business, because many Democrats who tend to run for business will come from an organizing perspective or as an employee perspective, and so understanding how small business owners is important. California does amazing panels, and Arizona, I know, has been working on the idea of doing a small business directory, Democratic-friendly small businesses. Virginia has small business Democratic clubs across the state, which make a big difference in endorsements when it comes to validation. That's very important. So these are just a couple of things. We as an organization, as we've grown, have also been able to do projects where we've been able to have speakers come in to talk about issues that affect small business. And of course, these panels that we do every 4 years. Last year, we had close to 1,400 people online, as an example. And this one is also streaming live, so I'm looking forward to seeing what those numbers are like. I want to take a quick moment to acknowledge our amazing executive board who have done so much great work. I used to chair the California caucus before I became state chair, and in October I was elected Western States Caucus chair for the DNC. As I've got those, and I'm also running for school board in my town, things have gotten a little bit busy, or as I put it, I'm Jewish and I love suffering, so why not? But none of what you see the last Monday or today would have been possible without this amazing executive board, including Christine Chin Ryan from Oregon. Also, as I go through my full list here, she is our executive vice president. Our vice president, Rhett Buttle, who ran business outreach and small business outreach for Clinton, as well as for Biden, and comes from a great couple of great organizations that you'll see speak today, as well, including Small Business Majority, which is where I first met him. Our secretary, Annette Krause from Texas, who gets so much stuff done and has been so great for the organization in making sure that the trains run on time, because as someone who has ADD, having someone who can back me up and handle this is so appreciated. We also have, as our other vice presidents, excuse me, Clay Middleton from South Carolina, as many of you know, who is sort of the right hand of Jamie Harrison and has been really helpful, and Atticus Franken from here in Illinois. I will then move to our region directors. We have region directors, we can have as many as 8. They deal with organizing in their areas. And I, first of all, want to recognize the OG of our region directors, Mark Kennedy from Virginia, who has been tireless in setting up and helping reach out to create organizations in the South. We have organizations that are in the final stages in Georgia, as well as Alabama, thanks to his amazing work, and we very much appreciate it. In the Northeast, we have Anne-Marie Principe, who has an amazing network and has been working with us to try to expand in the Northeast. We have, excuse me, Bridget Hunley, who was covering our West Coast and Pacific. She was not able to make it, had to have emergency surgery, so we are all hoping for a speedy recovery for her. And our West, Mark Robert Gordon, who covers our mountain states and has been helping us in places like Utah, Colorado, and Nevada, amongst other, and then some other state, I think, out there. I know, I'm just giving a hard time, and Arizona as well. He will be one of our moderators today. And then we also have several at-large positions in order to, and Omar Hashwi, who's handling our Midwest, who used to be on the California board before he decided to go back to Michigan. So we are also blessed to have 2 at-large members. One is Ms. Stafford, who is not here today, but she has been very active. She works with the National Council of American Indian Chamber of Commerce. And then Manny Crespin, who is also my treasurer for the Western states, but he is the vice chair of the New Mexico Democratic Party. So you can see we have an amazing diversity that reflects small business in this country, and this is important because much of the small business boom in this country has been driven, especially since the Great Recession, has been driven by women and communities of color, and making sure that our veteran-owned businesses and those others that don't have the margins of error that, let's say, Donald Trump had, where his father could just give him a couple $1 million, and if his business failed, which several did, he could always have the money to go back. Most small businesses, especially those that are immigrant or disadvantaged communities, they don't have that margin for error. And so the opportunities and the ability to be able to provide mentoring programs and access to capital is something that differentiates, again, us from Republicans. So today, our themes are focused on innovation. Granted, some of the changes, last moment changes we've had in the schedule, and myself having been an attorney for many tech startups, sometimes you have to innovate in putting together your speaking schedules as well. So we're doing that. But we're very lucky to have some wonderful speakers. Is the Lieutenant Governor here, by the way? Yet? Not yet. Okay. Wonderful. Well, we can always shift some folks around. John, would you be willing to go first? Okay. Well, let me introduce you to one of the folks, the first people I met when I became chair of the Small Business Council, which is John Arnsmeyer. He is the CEO and executive director of Small Business Majority. And as you'll see, as we focus on so many of the bills and the policies that this administration and Democrats have had, we have the most pro-small business president we've had in a long time. During the campaign, we saw 25, and this is a little bit of a backup to what John is going to be talking about. We had over 25 events with small business roundtables across the country with this president. Vice President Harris, everywhere she goes, she meets with small business owners. Republicans will not do that. They'll be happy to meet with large defense contractors and with big CEOs. But this is the kind of policies we've had, and the bills that have come out as a result of this administration have impacted small business in so many amazing ways, and not just the American Rescue Plan, but the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, but the the CHIPS Act, as well as several executive orders, and I know I'm missing at least one other one that'll be brought up in all this. Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, American Rescue Plan. Oh, Inflation Reduction Act is the last one. These all have had a major impact on small businesses across this country, not only to get us through the pandemic, but to help us move into the future. So with that, it's my pleasure to bring up John Arnsmeyer.
Thank you all for coming, getting through security, etc. And thank you, Andrew, and congratulations to all the work that you and everyone involved in the Small Business Caucus has done. It's really amazing how you've grown and the work you're doing. So it's absolutely essential, as we're going to talk about today. Small business is absolutely essential to our economy, our society, and quite frankly to the fortunes of the Democratic Party. So I want to talk a little bit about the importance of small business in messaging on a whole host of issues and why that's so critical in this election. You've all seen some of these numbers, but based on a number of recent studies, including one by the Pew Research Institute, small business is by far and away the most respected and trusted institution in our society. The Pew report had an 86%, more than the military at 60%, more than religious organizations at 59%, and way more than big businesses at 29%. So we already can see we have a nation and society that really is committed to and cares about the fortunes of small businesses, particularly coming out of the pandemic. There's a reason for that. Small businesses embody the American dream of autonomy, self-reliance, and building economic security. And voters want to make sure that every American has the freedom to start and run a business. Even if they are not going to do it themselves, they want to know that their neighbors and friends can do that if they want. As Andrew said, nowhere is this more important than in our nation's most under-resourced communities, particularly among BIPOC, immigrant, and women-owned businesses, and businesses in rural communities. That's where we focus most of our work as Small Business Majority. We do both policy and advocacy, and we connect business owners with resources across the country through our 10 offices across the country. Small businesses and entrepreneurship, and this has been great watching Vice President Harris over the last 4 years, it's really been an essential component of her work and her messaging and her call for an opportunity economy that she's really leaning into now. Small business ownership is a proven tool to create wealth, stability, and dignity for individuals of all backgrounds and demographics. And it's great that she is using her experience and her work over the last 4 years and leaning into that in the campaign. I know I'm biased, but it's essential that we talk about small business connected to every issue out there. And I'm going to just very briefly go through some of those issues in the campaign. And the small business frame, as I said, is not just important to building support from small business owners. It is, as I said, critical to building support from all voters who care about small business. My organization has spent almost the last 20 years mobilizing small business owners across the country across a wide range of issues. Our work is bolstered by scientific research and, equally if not more important, the stories and voices of small business owners in the trenches dealing with their issues every day in this very complex economy. So first, I want to say we should not be afraid to talk about government as an ally for small business. The Republicans like to say, just let government get out of the way, let the economy roll forward with no checks and balances, and all will be fine. And that just isn't true, and we should not let ourselves get caught in that trap of just a laissez-faire economy, and that's going to be great for small business. Our research shows that 80% of small businesses say large companies have too much power and too much control, and the government needs to step in and create a more equitable playing field. And even on regulations, where we hear the other side say, oh, all regulations are bad, and certainly there are regulations that need to be revised, and we shouldn't shy away from calling those out when they're burdensome. But our research shows that 78% of small business owners say that regulations are actually necessary to run a well-ordered, competitive economy. Small business owners just want consistency. So it's not an ipso facto ideological anti-regulation point of view, so we shouldn't shy away from that. So in talking about small business in this campaign, obviously the starting point is the great work that's been done by the Biden-Harris administration. You all know this, 19 million businesses have been started in the last 3.5 years. And again, to Andrew's point, the biggest growth has been among BIPOC, women-owned, immigrant-owned businesses. This is huge. The trend was heading the other way. And there's now a tremendous opportunity to build on that and to build the kind of economy that we want, a small business-centric economy. The American Rescue Plan, I'm just going to give some examples here, deployed $10 billion in the state small business credit initiative, which is providing capital and technical assistance to businesses across the country, and most importantly, with a 10-to-1 leverage ratio for private equity. So the benefit will be $100 billion when all is said and done. This is something that we're spending a lot of time focusing on, making sure that the money and the support and the technical assistance is getting to the businesses who need it the most. The SBA has, first of all, they did masterful work dealing with all of the pandemic programs, and they have expanded their lending and focused more on businesses that need the help the most, and that's something that we should be focused on. And of course, as Andrew said, there's billions, hundreds of billions of dollars as a result of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the CHIPS Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act. The small businesses really are at the table to benefit from. And so it isn't just, what you hear in the press is all the big companies that get it, but there's actually huge opportunities for small businesses. Well, look, we can't stop there. Those are major accomplishments, and I've just touched on a few, and those are what we need to lean into. But we need to look at a bunch of other issues. I'm just going to select a few here. First of all, the Biden-Harris administration has done incredible work, particularly through the Federal Trade Commission, in really trying to build an equitable, level playing field, truly competitive economy. And we need to focus on that. Lena Khan and her team has just done incredible work and really made this a big issue. And look, this is something the American people care about. I mean, J.D. Vance knows this, and he says, oh, I'm in favor of, small business over corporations. The problem is all the policies that he supports do the exact opposite. So even the Republicans have recognized, hey, this is a big deal, but it's the Biden-Harris administration that has actually been doing something about it, whether it's some non-compete agreements, price discrimination, franchising relationships. So we need to lean into that. Likewise, tax reform. Small businesses actually believe the tax system is completely skewed toward large corporations and the wealthy, and they actually support changes to the tax system away from a kind of a trickle-down economic focus to one that's bottom-up. So again, we shouldn't shy away from, Republicans like to say small businesses don't like taxes at all. No, small businesses want an equitable tax system. They recognize the need for a tax system. And again, this is something we can already see Vice President Harris focused on heavily. Same applies to healthcare. Over half of the participants in the ACA exchanges are small business owners, small business employees, and the self-employed. And the subsidies that were extended under the Inflation Reduction Act, they run out in 2025. Those are absolutely essential to maintain, as is, of course, issues around cost containment. One other issue I just want to focus on, reproductive health. That is a small business issue, and we have done a lot of work in that area. We have done a lot of work and research, and we have found that over 3/4 of small business owners feel this is important. It's important for women entrepreneurs, it's important for their employees, and this is an economic and business issue. So again, these are all issues that are important, but we've got to make sure we're talking about small business as connected with all of that. The list goes on: childcare, paid leave, integration of justice impacting individuals into our economy. All of these are small business issues. We've got information on this. We've got research on this. I would be happy to share. So in conclusion, small businesses are really critical. It's great to see Vice President Harris, her record as Vice President, also really leaning into this as we move forward. And let's just keep in mind that the more we can talk about small businesses and mobilize small businesses and get small business voices out there talking about these issues, the more effective we're going to be, not just with them, but with the voters in general. So thank you.
And I want to point out one thing here. When he talked about health care and access even to reproductive care, those of us who have small businesses and they have employees, these are like family. And when someone's life can be turned upside down by an unplanned pregnancy or one that may threaten the life of an employee, we should want to have those options for our employees. And we should want health care for our employees, because they will then want to come back and continue to work with us. I also would like to take a moment, because there's somebody I forgot to mention, but she's been one of our superstars, someone who served in the Obama administration of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and who has been assisting us with respect to rural outreach, which is another area we don't talk a lot about. But as those of us who have, we've seen how the Republicans have tried to get control of every communications mechanism in rural America. They go to church, and their pastor is telling them, Republicans good, Democrats bad. They go then watch Fox News. They get the same message. They go into the local community organizations in their chambers. They get the same message. But there are so many great Democratic-owned small businesses in rural America that we don't get to talk much about. And we need to create safe spaces so that they can feel comfortable to speak out and push back. So Judith Canales, who has been our superstar and so wonderful. And I would also point that we were originally supposed to have Governor Beshear, and Governor Beshear had something come up, was not able to make it. But Judith finds us amazing speakers, an amazing network, and she's also from Texas. And a former congressional candidate, which, by the way, is probably a lucky thing that you've dodged. But we're really happy and so blessed to have Judith here, and she's going to be introducing our next speaker.
Andrew, thank you so much for your wonderful leadership of the Democratic National Committee, championing small businesses. That's what it's about, folks. That's what it's about. Thank you, and all of my colleagues that have been serving on this council, and we've been working together as volunteers to prepare for today. It is indeed an honor for me, as a native Texan, born and raised in Uvalde, South Texas, but our big city is San Antonio. And I went to school there, have graduated from there with my graduate degrees and such, and have worked in San Antonio. And I am so thrilled to introduce to you today the mayor of San Antonio, Texas, Ron Nirenberg. He is, thank you. San Antonio is the 7th largest city in the United States. So mayor has a lot, he and council have much to keep track of, as it is also one of the fastest growing cities. And under his leadership, San Antonio adopted an equity framework in budgeting to reduce poverty, improve public health, and overcome historical socioeconomic inequalities in the community. But he has turned it around significantly, focused on making the investments that are necessary for that continued growth and making sure that communities are covered. And I can say this from having worked there under when the CARES Act was being implemented. San Antonio was on it, and we covered all of the quadrants of the community to make sure that small businesses were stabilized and flourishing and kept going. The U.S. Conference of Mayors recognized Mayor Nuremberg's leadership and honored him as the small business advocate. He is now in his 4th term, and the mayor continues on his mission of innovating San Antonio to be competitive in this global economy. So with that, it is indeed a pleasure to introduce to you Mayor Ron Nuremberg of San Antonio, Texas. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Great to be with you. Thank you very much, Judy, for that kind introduction. So I understand that Andy Bashir was going to be here, but let me pick up on a theme that I think he would probably talk about, and that is how we advance progressive policy in the middle of a deep red state. We do that in San Antonio, Texas, the 7th largest city in the United States, as you heard, a city that has struggled mightily with socioeconomic inequities, a city in which we have made significant investments in housing and in access to education and workforce, a place where we want to build generational wealth for communities who frankly have been disinvested in for years and years and years, generations after generations. Typically we think about home ownership as one of those ways to build generational wealth. But I'm here to talk a little bit about why small business and small business development is one of those opportunities to build generational wealth. Thousands of families in San Antonio generate their assets from generation to generation through their small businesses, through family-owned businesses. And the opportunity that I think we have before us in this period of investment in rebuilding and restoring the American economy, in a time when there are literally trillions of dollars of investments being made by Vice President Harris and President Biden and soon to be Vice President Walz, trillions of dollars to rebuild infrastructure, to build up our middle class, to restore the hope and faith in the American economy. What the opportunity is for us to really lean into, as small business champions in local communities, to lean into the procurement economy. So believe it or not, in San Antonio in the year 2021, if you count all of the public contracting dollars that were being spent by public agencies, we had a $9 billion opportunity to build business, to grow small and micro businesses, to create jobs in our local community. Now, $9 billion of procurement and public contracting is a lot of money, but it means nothing if those dollars aren't staying in your local communities, creating local jobs, building up small businesses in your local economy. So what we've done in San Antonio is develop a playbook called Supply SA, a difficult task to wrangle all of the public agencies, public procurement entities, from community college district to public universities to our public hospital district to the city of San Antonio to our county procurement agencies. But we have wrangled 14 public organizations to sit around the table with their CEOs and procurement arms to create a playbook in which we are committed to simplifying and standardizing the procurement process, to create a one-stop shop for small businesses who frankly don't have the capabilities, the capacities, or technical know-how to actually even apply for public contracts. Not to mention that if they did, oftentimes when we're talking about $9 billion of public contracting amidst 14 different public agencies, you're talking about at least 14 different doors that you'd have to go through to apply for a contract, to apply for a procurement opportunity. So what we're doing is creating a one-stop shop and a playbook that simplifies the process in which all the public agencies can lean into the procurement economy with one front door, thereby making sure that small businesses, micro businesses, contractors that might not have ever heard of the opportunities of the $9 billion that we have year after year after year, to help them access the procurement economy, building up their capacities within their businesses to apply for those opportunities, to apply for those contracts. $9 billion in a single year going into our small business economy is the single most powerful activator of small business growth that we have, the creation of jobs in our local communities. So we're moving forward on that one-stop shop. San Antonio is developing a playbook that can be replicated across this country by any city in the country. We are working with the Aspen Institute. And I will also tell you that something that's important in San Antonio, which is I'm the first Asian American mayor of the city of San Antonio. Thank you. My API brothers and sisters are in the house. But San Antonio is also the largest Latino majority city in the country. We have tremendous disparities in public contracting. We have a disparity study that we've been updating every 5 years per law since 2005, and we have a model SBETA program, Small Business Economic Development, to make sure that contracts are going to minority and women-owned firms at the rate that would close those disparities. That's an important public policy priority for the city of San Antonio to restore equity and investment in our communities. So one of the other opportunities with Supply SA is now that we have all these public agencies leaning in at the same table, including our utilities, which are publicly owned, now we can take those policy priorities to the next level and make them also a feature of all the different public procurement entities in our city. So again, I'm here as a small business advocate, as a mayor, as a neighbor, but also as someone who believes in the importance of small businesses to our community. And I would urge you again to check out San Antonio, look up Supply SA, download our playbook, and again, take advantage of the procurement economy and the creation of opportunities all across this country to make good on the investments of the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS and Science Acts, the generational opportunities through the investment of a progressive, forward-looking vice president and president who we look to elect in 2024. So thank you all very much. God bless you. Come visit us.
So we are blessed to have a great speaker as well who can talk with us about rural small business before we move to the panel. So I would like to introduce Joel Heitkamp. He actually managed Southeast Water Users, the Southeast Water Users District in Matador, North Dakota. And as you know, for anyone in rural business, particularly our farmers, water is life. And so that makes a huge difference. And he also served in the state senate in North Dakota. He currently has a radio show. He was host of KFGO's News and Views program, and now hosts the John Heitkamp Show on KFGO, KLXX, and KCJB. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Heitkamp. Thank you.
Well, it's good to be with you folks. You might recognize the name. I have this much older aunt named Heidi Heitkamp. She served in the United States. She's my sister. Anyway, we're 7 kids sandwiched into 9 years. And because we're talking about women's rights a lot, which we should be at this convention, I just want you to know that I'm the last of those 7. And my mom brought up often that you were born in '61, Joel, and the pill came out in '62 or you wouldn't be here. So not sure what that meant, but the love was in the room. Anyway, we're here to talk about small business. And I manage a small radio station that's syndicated throughout other radio stations. So basically the team I manage is a team of 30-some, give or take, on that given day. It's important. It really is important. And I think that the biggest mistake that we as small businesses make is we sell ourselves short. We don't charge what we should charge. We provide the service. We certainly do. We go about making sure that people are treated the way they should and deliver the product they should. But we in the rural area are used to what happened before us. And so we cut ourselves short. And by cutting ourselves short, I think that we define ourselves in a way we shouldn't. Now that's changing, and that's changing because of the opportunities and avenues we have. The radio station I worked at, ladies and gentlemen, in that radio station, we used to, obviously, because AM radio got a revitalization. Unfortunately, it got it through, means that weren't positive for our party. In other words, I'm saying Rush Limbaugh. I mean, Rush Limbaugh really did revitalize AM radio and talk radio, and he took it to a place, albeit, somewhat evil, to where people were listening again. Now that's segging to FM radio. FMs are starting to find out about talk radio and how it can be successful. So it's a means of communication. It's important. It's a small business. It's a different business than some people understand. Now, I'm going to go back in time to my days in the state Senate when I was also managing a utility, a rural water district. Understand this, that about 12 to 15 employees, again, a small business, but a service industry. Your rural electric, your rural water district, your rural telephone, all of those things are part of many of us in this room, in our lives. Now, those were ideas that came about through people in this room and others. Those were, cooperative movements. And so the business that was set up needed to be professional, it needed to be run, and it needed to work with other businesses. Because for them to be professional and them to meet their demands, it had to happen. Right? And so I think that, again, I'm going to go down the road of provide service, but provide it in different ways. In radio, if we're not online, if we're not blogging, if we're not podcasting, get out of the room. You're done. The hugest part of my audience now is that. I get calls, and let me explain to you, because the radio stations that listen to me are Montana, they're Minnesota, they're South Dakota, and they're North Dakota. That's my biggest footprint. Now, every place I just represented is in Mesa, Arizona, or Cape Coral, Florida, all winter long, right? I mean, they leave. They want to continue listening. They want to be part of that process yet. And so we as a small business had to find that means, connect to that means, make sure they knew how to use that means. And I'm not trying to say that as a detriment to the elderly, but they weren't used to it. We adjusted, we adapted, we trained, we succeeded. And so again, rural, small business. And I can tell you this as the manager, we don't give it away. We don't, and we don't give it away, and by doing that, I can pay my employees more than what they can get in other sectors or other professions, because I don't know about you, but the biggest problem we have is employees. Keeping them, not whether they're good or not, but keeping them. Because if you wanted a job in any one of the states I just mentioned, you'd have a job in 2 seconds. Now, I've had 2 jobs in my profession. My daughter has already had 5, each one laddering to make her more money, right? If we don't, as rural businesses, find a way to pay people a competitive wage, and we just assume that the rural will take less, we're going to be on the outside looking in. And it's going to affect who lives in our state. It's going to see an out-migration. And the out-migration, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be some of the most intelligent, highly educated people that we can provide, which in many cases means as rural states we lose Democrats. And it shows. It shows in how they're voting. It shows in how they're reacting on school boards. And for me in the state Senate, when I came in, we were a very, very progressive state. We had 2 United States senators. We had our lone congressional seat. We had the governor. right? And we just kept losing our best and brightest because we didn't pay them. Now that's a hard thing for real small businesses to meet, to match. But if we're not going to pay them, we're going to continue to go backwards. All right, so that's my soapbox. If anybody would like to be on a number of radio stations in Michigan, I'm working for them this week in Wisconsin, or any of the states I just mentioned, please find me afterwards. Would love to get about 3-4 minutes and put you on one of those radio stations. Thanks for the time.
All right, so we have a very special guest who has come in, and have my colleague Omar Hashmi, who is our Midwest Region Director, to do the introduction. But I'm very excited because he's a former boss of mine. I worked on his state controller campaign. So Omar, are you ready to come on up? All right, thank you.
Greetings, everybody. So my name is Omar Hashmi, and I serve as a board member and Midwest Regional Director of the DNC Small Business Council. It is an honor to introduce to you Mr. Steve Wesley, the founder and managing partner of the Wesley Group. Mr. Wesley and his partners have built one of the largest sustainability venture firms in the US with close to $800 million under management. He is an early executive who also helped take eBay public. And from 2003 to 2007, he also served as the state controller and chief financial officer of California. And in the 2008 election cycle, Mr. Wesley served as California's co-chair of the Obama for America campaign. He also served as the Secretary of Energy's Advisory Board as a representative of the venture capital industry. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Steve Wesley to the podium.
Thank you, Omar. I am ecstatic to be here. Welcome, Chicago. Welcome, delegates. This is my 10th convention, and I am pretty damn excited about this thing. So, we've got a tight schedule, and I said instead of speaking for 5 minutes, I'm going to speak for 3 minutes, and I would like to give you all a chance to ask any questions you have. The more controversial, the better. I am ready. So, I'm going to start out with a trivia. A lot of you may not know this, but California is today the world's 5th largest economy. We are about to pass Germany. They have 78 million people. We have 39 million people. The average Californian is 2x as productive as the most efficient Western European economies, and that is solely because we are the leader in technology and innovation. Like it or not, this is our future. And that does not mean every one of you needs to tell your kids to go off and be an electrical engineer or computer scientist. But it does mean our party needs to speak to the issues of training our kids to be successful in the next generation, how to figure out how to use AI and machine learning to give every kid a chance to be successful in this new world. We have to speak to the issues of small business, which is where the majority of voters in our country are, and innovation, where increasingly the majority of jobs are. This is our future, and the Democratic Party must always speak to the future. So I'm going to pause here for a minute. I have known Kamala Harris for over 30 years. When I was controller, I ran for governor. I narrowly lost by 3.5 percentage points. My wife was ecstatic. But Kamala was one of my 5 state co-chairs. And I will just tell you, no one is more comfortable with technology, innovation, small business, the future than Kamala. She truly represents the Democratic Party, and not just the old Democratic Party that I'm part of, but the new Democratic Party. Biracial, seeing the future, understanding this, willing to talk about law and order issues. She is the real deal and charismatic and about as nice a human being as you will ever meet. Are you fired up about this convention or what? So, What I want to do is pause here. I've got loads of stories to tell you. One of the things we first did at our venture capital firm, I came home one night and I told my wife, we've just made an enormous bet on the future. This was in 2007. We've invested in this teeny electric car company in San Carlos, California, and it's going to be big. And in 2007, folks, the only electric vehicle anybody had ever seen was a golf cart. It turned out to be Tesla. So my wife said, go get your money back. I'm glad we didn't. Elon may be crazy. I can tell you firsthand. I chaired the audit committee there, and if there's any members of the press, he is crazy. But he also saw the future, and the average electric vehicle on the road today gets the equivalent of over 100 miles per gallon. That is a transformative shift. This is the promise of technology. We need to own the good part of these issues, make sure these firms aren't stealing anybody's private data, make sure these firms aren't doing anything to get kids hooked on bad social media. They have responsibilities just like everybody else and ought to be held accountable. But we can't keep our heads in the sand. Just as we were the party of civil rights, just as we were the party of LGBTQ rights, we must be the party of the future here. With that, is there a quick question or two, and then we're going to get on to the rest of the agenda? Anybody have a quick question? Ma'am, I love you. You're smiling, you're attentive, you go to the head of the class here. So first, the Biden-Harris administration has sort of led the way in getting more government money out to programs like this than any in history. But I just want to recount quickly. Infrastructure bill, largest in history, bipartisan. No one else other than Joe Biden and Kamala could have gotten this done. Semiconductor Act, literally igniting the economy in Arizona, states all around the country, as Joe Biden said the other night. We've invested even more in red states than the blue states. We are giving everybody an opportunity. I will also tell you that the Inflation Reduction Act has already created close to 200,000 jobs, over 120 new factories already landed. There are provisions for minority and women-based companies all across the board. The Democratic Party has always stood for this. We always will stand for this, but I appreciate that. One more, or are we done?
We have a secretary.
I will let the make way for the secretary. Thank you all, ma'am. I will stick around afterwards, but we've been preempted. Thank you all. Get fired up. Get ready. We're going to win this election. Thank you.
Let's thank Steve Wesley for a moment. He is amazing. It's a privilege to get to work with him, work for him, and for him to come in on such short notice and share this information, and also to follow up on your information as well. You know, and this is a good segue with respect to Secretary Sue coming in. The Biden administration actually put forth an executive order doubling the opportunities for minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses in the Department of Defense and in other areas as well. So that is the kind of commitment that Steve was talking about. It is my pleasure to introduce our Acting Secretary of Labor, and she was also the U.S. Deputy Secretary of Labor since 2021, and prior to that served as the California Labor Commissioner under Governor Gavin Newsom. So always happy to have someone who has served under Governor Newsom and Governor Brown and many others. It's my pleasure to introduce Secretary Julie Sue. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's afternoon. How's everybody feeling? That's so great. Last night was quite a party, and this is actually my first convention. How many people, is this your first convention also? All right, there we go. So I just wanted to come here. I'm actually here in my personal capacity. But as someone who benefited from my parents owning small businesses when I was growing up, when I was very little, my parents had a laundromat and dry cleaning business, and I just remember sitting on top of the dryers while my grandmother, it was an intergenerational business for us, which I think it is for so many, was sewing on buttons and hemming pants. And then when I was in high school, my parents actually owned a pizza restaurant. And so I know just how hard it is, how much grit it takes, how much creativity, and how much dedication it takes to be a small business owner. So I wanted to come here and thank you all for what you do, and also say that, in this time period, and I think you've already heard this, but under this president, and under our vice president, Kamala Harris, soon to be president, we have seen a small business boom in this country. And I hope that you all are feeling it. That's in terms of access to capital. It's in terms of really focusing on especially small businesses that are minority owned. It's about how we do our procurement in government to make sure that small businesses are given a real shot. And it's about recognizing that you all are the engines of our economy. What you do not only supports families like mine when I was little, and lifts up communities, but you are also our greatest job creators. And so I come to let you know that we know that we need somebody in the White House, in the highest office in our land, who understands what it means to run a small business and who understands what government can do to support small businesses. And that's one of many reasons why we need to elect currently Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Walz to the presidency and the vice presidency of this country. The other thing is, I just want to say, oftentimes in elections, you know who one candidate is, right? You know that somebody has been an incumbent, right? We have an incumbent Democratic Party nominee right now who has been our vice president at the time of a massive small business boom in this country. And oftentimes you have another candidate, you're not exactly sure what they're going to do. We know exactly what the other candidate is going to do this time. We know exactly because he's done it before. We've seen him do it. We had to endure it. We had to endure the vitriol, the utter lack of interest in actually learning how to do the job well, but the constant embarrassment both on a national stage and an international stage, right? We've been through that before. We also know that someone was in office when COVID hit, and instead of developing a national strategy to address the worst global pandemic in 100 years, decided to deny that it was even happening, right? Decided to say, not my problem. Told us to inject bleach into our veins. And as a result, many small businesses had to shut down during that time with very little support. Now, when President Biden and Vice President Harris came into office, the American Rescue Plan Act gave that support, right? And many small businesses closed permanently because of it. I saw that in my home state. I know people for whom that happened. So we need somebody in office who cares about doing the job well, who cares about being smart, making good decisions, and understanding that their words, their policies have impact. And that is why I am so excited to be here to say that we have a very real choice in November. But it's going to take all of us to get it done. Because, again, I can't imagine how somebody who did the same job before and finished the job with, for example, fewer jobs in the country than when he came into office should ever be given a second chance, right? Looked a global pandemic in the eye and made it worse. Why would we give that person another chance? That's right. Who has vowed to, and when he was in office, rolled back civil rights, voting rights, the things that have been so hard fought for by my ancestors, your ancestors, and by our communities. Why would we give that person another chance? But the reality is, it's a close election. And so it is going to require every single one of us to do everything we can to get the vote out. And one thing we know well is that the reason why people who are sitting on the fences, who aren't sure what to do, who might not be motivated to vote, the reason why they vote is not because of commercials, it's not because of advertisements, it's not because of social media, and it's not even because of conventions like this, as fun as they may be. It's because somebody they know talked to them about why the election matters. It's because somebody they know reminded them of when election day was, and somebody they know helped them make a plan to get to the polls. And in those states where the election is close, it's going to take just a few people for each of us to talk to turn this election our way. So are you with me to be the people who are going to go out and talk to other people and help them make a plan? All right. So let's do this so we can have years going forward of a president who wants to do the job, right? Not just talk about it. Who cares about people, who cares about being decent, who, when making decisions, thinks about who's not at the table and tries to bring them in. Who will make sure that your community, that all the things that you struggle for as hard as your work is intent on trying to figure out how she can support and make it easier. So let's get this done. Thank you all so much for everything you have done and will do, and I look forward to winning in November and doing everything we can to support your community. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to bring up our Vice Chair, Atticus Franken, who can move on to our panel, and our panelists who have been very patient as we've been working at all of this together. Thank you. And if I can also, before I forget, please scan this. This is a way to get done to get our agenda. We want to make sure you get involved with us as well. Go ahead. Here.
Hey everybody, I'm Atticus, Vice Chair of the Small Business Owners Council, and I'm really honored to be able to introduce Mark Gordon. He's an Arizona native and has been involved in Democratic campaigns since the early 90s. And he is one of the leading voices and voting rights advocates and leading voices on that issue. He's also been in the trenches of election protection, working in civil rights, and has been an entertainment attorney and a professional actor, director, writer, and producer. He's a 30-year union member and sits on, as I believe, the vice chair of the Arizona AFL-CIO. Gordon is the founder, as I should say, of, I should read that, it's the founder of the Voting Rights Fund, which is a PAC that's advocating for state and local initiatives to make sure that fight election suppression and other Republican-driven efforts. Of course, he is also the co-chair of the Democratic Law Professionals Association, the founder of the Arizona Democratic Small Business Council, and a longtime elected Arizona State Democratic Committee member and precinct committeeman, which is, of course, the most important job that anybody can have in the party across the board. Mark Gordon.
Well, hello, Democrats. All right, you're still there. Come on, let them hear you in Mar-a-Lago. Hello, Democrats. There we are. Let them hear you in Sing Sing. Hello, Democrats. There we go, and let Trump hear that. Okay, we are here to change the narrative that Democrats are not the party of business. Well, Democrats mean business. Let's change it, and that's what today's panelists are going to help us understand and what today's speakers have helped us understand. Democrats, under the Biden-Harris administration, have led to the first, second, and third strongest years of new business growth on record. Democrats did that. Democrats have led to the strongest labor market in record under this administration. Democrats did that. Democrats led to black business ownership growing at the fastest rate in 30 years. Democrats did that. Latino businesses have increased their ownership at the greatest rate in over a decade. All-time high in small business contracts awarded by the Small Business Administration. $32 billion in SBA grants to service disability veteran-owned businesses. Democrats did that, and without a single Republican vote, Democrats passed the American Rescue Plan that led to $10 billion in state small business initiative fund $250 billion to finance 500,000 small businesses by the end of this decade. Democrats did that. Without a single Republican vote, Democrats passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which reduced costs for small businesses, specifically doubled research and development, and reformed the tax code to help small businesses. Democrats did these things, my friends, without a single Republican vote. Democrats mean business. So, with that, I'm introducing a fine panel of people to prove what Democrats have done in this administration. Would the panelists please come take your seat as I call them to the stage, please. We have Michael Swords, the Vice President of Government Affairs and International Relations for the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator. Michael. We have Terius Harris, Director of Indigenous Partnerships and Inclusive Economy at Businesses for Conservation and Climate Action, the BCCA. He serves on the American Sustainable Business Network. Terius. Let's give Michael a hand also, please. Thank you. We have LaWanna Russell, the chairman of the board of the Small Business Majority, joining us today. And we have Richard Trent, the executive director of Main Street Alliance. My friends, it's clear I have very little voice today because I was yelling so much last night out of joy. So I'm going to ask you each to introduce yourselves, going right down the line from my left and going to my further left. If you could please introduce yourselves and what you do.
Takuni iani ta'i nani Terius. Good evening, relatives. My name is Terius Harris. No affiliation familially to our presidential nominee, but after hearing the impact that she's had on the many people in her life, I wish that I was. I'm a proud descendant of the Usavi people, and I serve as the Director of Indigenous Partnerships and Inclusive Economy at the American Sustainable Business Network. With over 250,000 members and affiliates through our state affiliations and associations, we are a movement builder who work in partnership with the business and investor community to not only develop, but also advocate for policies to policymakers, businesses, and investors alike who believe in regenerative, just, and equitable economy for all, both people and planet. We are also a proud MOU signer of the Department of Interior Public-Private Partnership that focuses on economic development and private sector partnerships within Indian country. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I am so jazzed. I'm so excited to be here after last night. I have been walking on air, so forgive me if I am really excited today, and you guys are just going to have to get excited with me. My name is LaWanna Russell. I am the chair of the Small Business Majority. You heard a lot from my president today, John Arnsmeyer, and talking about how we support small businesses across the country and helping them with access to capital and all of the things that matter to all levels of small businesses. I have the other opportunity to wear another hat today for you as the president, founder, and CEO of Business Management Associates. That's my firm. We are a management consulting firm, and we are in the government contracting space. So much of what the speakers have been talking about all day already earlier has impacted me personally, and so I'm really excited to come here and share that voice from the small business side, from SBM, and for me personally. Thank you.
Of course. Hello, my name is Michael Swords. I'm the Vice President of Government and International Relations at the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator, or LACI as we're more commonly known. We are a technology incubator nonprofit that was created by the city of Los Angeles back in 2011 to help spur the development of an inclusive and equitable green economy in Los Angeles. And since we opened our doors almost 12 years ago, we've helped over 400 companies that have gone through our startup support programs. We've created almost 3,000 jobs. We've created over $550 million of economic activity in the city of Los Angeles. And just this year, our startups surpassed $1 billion in follow-on funding. And so we're incredibly proud. And I think we'll talk a little bit about this later, but none of this would have been possible without political leadership from the local, regional, state, and federal level, and all of the key decision makers who were involved in supporting Lacey from the very beginning were Democrats. And so I'm really proud to be here. And I am here on my own, not representing my organization, so all of my opinions are myself.
What's up, people? I'm Richard Trent, the Executive Director of Main Street Alliance. For going on 18 years or so, Main Street Alliance has been fighting to make sure that the folks making decisions and shaping policy for local economies are our Main Street entrepreneurs, not the billionaire class, not mega corporations. We create political home for entrepreneurs to ground truth a policy agenda that's reflective of their own needs and interests, to build community and coalitions with like-minded entrepreneurs, and to elevate their voices and take their ideas to elected officials. It's kind of feeling like small business summer here, America is entering a small business era, which I love for America. But the truth is that there's still so much to be worried about. And if I'm channeling my inner Michelle Obama here, we really can't look at this moment and these statistics with rose-colored glasses. We have to recognize the fact that even though the DOJ and FTC are stronger, that corporate consolidation is continuing, that tax policy is still skewed to benefit so many of the largest corporations in our country, that a patchwork care economy is making it harder for entrepreneurs to operate their own businesses. And there's never been a better time to build power and to build our coalition to make sure that elected officials know what Main Street really wants.
Thank you, panelists, and thank you for that. So we're going to start talking more specifically about the Biden-Harris administration and what it's done. And to that end, and I went over some of the acts, and our prior speakers did as well, I'd like to ask just generally what Biden-Harris administration acts have impacted your business and your group that you represent. I'd like to start with Ms. Russell.
Absolutely. I think it's been interesting hearing about all of the acts, right? I have all of my notes on all of the acts and how they have impacted us individually. But as I've been listening, I have been thinking about the ecosystem that has been created. It's been a really wonderful ecosystem brilliantly created by the Biden administration. So again, coming in, we had COVID, we have the American Rescue Plan, we have those monies being pushed out through SBA in a brilliant way that's impacting many small businesses that employ 62 million individuals. 62 million, a huge number. So we have that money going out to support those small businesses to help many of them stay in place. And as we are doing that, we learn that, oh gosh, we need to look at SBA more closely. How can SBA help in the ecosystem as well? Pushing out more funding and more helping SBA with their infrastructure and their processes to again further help. Then you have another layer, right? You have the Infrastructure Act, and that's another layer of this wonderful ecosystem that the Biden administration has built. Because when you're looking at small businesses, we need that level of support. And so when you're thinking about the Infrastructure Act and we're talking about the flow of money, it's really two sides for that one that has really helped us. On one side, when you're looking at building that infrastructure, when small businesses are looking to innovate and small businesses need that air to innovate, we're looking to have just the basic infrastructure, broadband, et cetera. And then on the other side, we're looking at that flow of money. And when we're talking about how the money is really coming in to those communities, coming in from the federal side into those communities to spread out to help small businesses. And I think so many of us forget how we can access that money as the small business, right? And so then what did the Biden administration do? They put in some of those technical assistance programs. And so when you're looking at all of the states. You're looking at organizations like Small Business Majority. You're looking at some of these organizations that are sitting on stage. Now they have access to that funding to develop the technical assistance programs that are really in the communities to help the small businesses start to access the money that is flowing in. Because as you're a small business and you're sitting there and you're learning and you're hearing all of this, you're like, what is this? How does this apply to me? How do I get this? How do I capture that money? Biden and Kamala thought about that. Well, let's put in some additional technical assistance so that we can help them, because it is a quagmire when you're looking at it. So now you understand where the money is flowing, you understand how it's coming in, you understand how you can get it, right? Whether it's at a federal level, is it a state and local level? How are you as a small business able to go in and get that contract to get that money? I know that, can I make one more comment? Okay, so I was meeting with a client, a potential client, and this is like a real example of how that money is flowing. And this client had probably 5 different opportunities that I had looked at and said, oh gosh, you have 5 different opportunities here. Where all of a sudden are you getting this money from this federal agency, getting all of this money to all of a sudden do this work internally to make that mission better, because every federal agency's mission is to serve the public, right? So when they're getting that money to make that mission better, they're putting out all these contracts, they go right back to the IRA. And they say, well, because of Biden, because of this act, we now have the money that we need to make our organization better. So not only are they making the organization better, then they're pushing those dollars out to small businesses to do the work to make the organization better. So when I was thinking and listening today, all I could think about was, wow, this is a beautiful ecosystem that the Biden administration has created for small businesses, not only to support us as we're moving along to make us stronger, but also to get us the dollars on the other side with so many of the acts that are coming through, and it's been brilliant.
Right. Thank you. You do need to know how to use the funds that are provided and have the pathways to that. Mr. Swartz?
Yeah. So I just want to take a step back and say, one of the things we've known in California for a long time is that really smart policies and regulations can send the market signals to create new industries. And so if you look at California historically, we passed some of the first energy efficiency laws back in the 70s. We passed the first renewable portfolio standard, the zero emission vehicle mandate, energy storage mandates, a lot of the clean air regulations. All of these policies and regulatory decisions that were made by the California state government has led to California becoming a global leader in climate tech. The biggest export in California right now is electric vehicles, right? So we understand the value of how smart public policy and regulations can really drive the development of markets. And what the IRA is going to do is exactly that. A lot of people were concerned when the original estimates were going to be in the $1 trillion range, that it got cut down to $370 billion. Well, if you look at a lot of the projections that have been made by Goldman Sachs and some of these other investment banks, that $370 billion in initial, a lot of it's made up of tax credits, and those tax credits aren't capped. And so there's a good chance that some of the benefits from the IRA will actually exceed $1 trillion in investments because of all the tax credits and rebates that are built into the bill. So it's the most impactful climate bill probably in the history of the planet. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about how other countries around the world are starting to look at what the United States has done and are starting to emulate it.
That's great. Yeah, build it and the businesses will come.
That's right.
We do have a little bit of a press for time. I'm going to ask everyone to answer this, and thank you all for your innovation today, as we've had to deal with some extenuating circumstances. So Mr. Trent, the question again is, how has the Biden-Harris administration and their acts benefited your business, your agency?
Well, how much time do we have? I mean, you can't talk enough about the American Rescue Plan. And there was a period of time where 70% of restaurants across this country were on the verge of going out of business forever. because of Main Street Alliance and the organizing of our members. Chef Dan Jacobs, if you watch Top Chef, anyone, one of our members, actually had a meeting with President Biden where he expressed concerns about what it was like to run a restaurant in the middle of a pandemic. President Biden listened. PPP, EIDL program came shortly after that. That's key. Inflation Reduction Act was unbelievably important for the bolstering of those premium tax credits that have kept healthcare affordable for millions of Americans for a while now. When that expires next year, there are working families across this country that can expect to pay upwards of $18,000 more in healthcare costs. We can't let that happen. The CHIPS Act, the CHIPS Act, I talk about it not necessarily because we have a huge constituency in manufacturing, but because there are so many downstream economic impacts that come from bringing good-paying jobs back to America. You go to the bakery down the street to get lunch after, for work. You save money so that you can start your own enterprise down the road. And so I really just want to encourage the administration to keep making it so that access to these resources continue to be available and easy to get at, because organizations like Main Street Alliance shouldn't have to exist to continue demystifying these resources for small businesses. But until it's abundantly clear how to navigate these often complex channels to access resources, we will exist and we'll be there for workers and small business owners.
Yeah, the pathways are very difficult to know on your own. That's where Ms. Russell's organization and others have been helpful as well. Sure. And Mr. Harris.
I think Ms. Russell's point earlier of these ecosystems that are built were something that I took into consideration earlier when thinking about this, and specifically that it's so hard to determine which act has been most impactful for small businesses overall, because this administration has done so well to make small businesses so successful. However, when I thought about our company and the communities that we serve, it definitely was the Inflation Reduction Act, and that specific act, mostly because Trump's inability to address COVID-19 obviously shuttered small businesses across America and made it very difficult for small businesses to be successful. However, the Biden administration's introduction of the Inflation Reduction Act sought to bring back our economy, and they did that by protecting the people behind the small businesses and also focusing on the environment. This is a very broadly written piece of legislation that has a broad impact, focusing on different areas of energy and climate, also leading to healthcare and federal tax regulation. And so within that, I think the more important, or like one of the things that has been very inspiring for us to see, is specifically its inclusion of tribal nations and indigenous communities within the actual act itself, which is unprecedented for any act of this stature specifically, and has led to a lot of economic development within Indian country and a lot of investment not only from the federal government, but from the private sector, which has already shown to be very successful for indigenous-led businesses.
Yeah, the more we're given opportunity, the more businesses can thrive, right? Yeah, very good. So this is an innovation panel, and we talked about innovation. Mr. Swords, how has the Biden-Harris administration's approach to innovation impacted you? Specifically innovation, I know you were talking about clean energy policy. If you can elaborate a little bit on innovation.
Yeah, innovation is at the heart of what we do. We support very early stage startups that are creating technologies that are going to help the environment, essentially. And our entire ecosystem is built around supporting companies that are going to disrupt industries, right? And so innovation is key to that. And we've had no better friend in Washington since 2021 than the Biden-Harris administration. We've had tremendous access to the administration. We've met with them, I think, at least 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
Vice President Biden has come to our campus. When he was Vice President, but Vice President Harris has visited our campus, Speaker Pelosi. They all view what we are doing as key to helping both California and the nation achieve both its climate and economic development goals. So by passing bills like the bipartisan infrastructure law, which is going to provide $7.5 billion for electric vehicle charging, which our our companies are responding to that market signal that the federal government is spending, and they're going to create supply chains and industrial supply chains around that to create products that are going to help the government achieve some of those missions and some of the states and localities that are going to get that funding. So they've just had a huge impact on supporting our ecosystem. And one of the things that I'm most excited by is that they are already developing plans for a potential Harris-Walz administration, and a lot of the things that got left out of the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law due to some deal making that had to be done in order to get those bills across the finish line, they're going to be put back into some major pieces of legislation that you're going to see. So if anyone needs any incentive here to work even harder than I know you all are already going to work, it's if we have control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency. I think what we did with the IRA and the bill and the CHIPS and Science Act is going to pale in comparison. I think we are going to see way more ambitious legislation, and you're going to see things get done that wouldn't have been possible, particularly with another Trump administration.
Right, so innovation really helps, again, for us to thrive and move forward and make progress. Anybody else want to speak on this particular point?
Just adding to that, when you're talking about them taking it forward, because they're always thoughtful. They're always looking at that feedback, that loop of, oh, this is what has happened. Oh, now we're getting some feedback. We understand exactly where we are. We understand where small businesses are because we have done this. Now we need to take it another level. Now we need to see what more we can do. So let's incorporate that. So instead of looking at it as, that one time, like we're done, I love the way that they are constantly reviewing their work and incorporating and understanding what is the next level that small business needs. Where do they need to go next? How are we going to support research and development? Oh, that's how. We're going to put it over here in this act. Now, after you've done that research and development, what is the next level? And that's one of the major things that I love about what they've been doing.
Yeah, I'll just say that in terms of innovation, the Biden administration, I think, and working with organizations like Main Street Alliance and some of the folks here on the stage, are starting to expand the idea of what a small business owner actually is, right? So during the pandemic, while a lot of us were baking 1 million sourdough loaves and drinking an ungodly amount of wine, the creator economy boomed, right? And you had all these folks come online, set up shops, content creators. These are folks that need to be protected, that need to make sure that large language models aren't crawling the internet and stealing their content and when they're not being compensated for it. And so I think that an innovation is really just starting to expand this understanding of what the traditional small business owner actually is and moving towards progress of protecting them and make sure that we have systems in place to make sure that they're not being exploited.
Great. Mr. Harris?
I would say that for us, the main piece, and my co-panelists have said a lot, but I would say that for us, I think that innovation looks different for a lot of different people, but I think that sometimes when we think of innovation, we don't always think of the inclusivity that comes with innovation. And so just to harp back on the IRA and specifically the unprecedented amount of investment within Indian country, we have seen a lot of great indigenous-led businesses have the opportunity to stand up and fill in some of the spaces that were previously empty, especially when it comes to like energy transition. I think about one of our members, the Alliance for Tribal Clean Energy, who is trying to address the regulatory practices of FERC and make it more accessible for tribal nations and indigenous-led businesses to access the same resources that normal businesses are able to access. And they're able to now get a seat at the table because of their inclusion, not only in the IRA, but also by giving them a better platform to stand on, but also giving them an opportunity to be a part of the Green New Future as well. And I think those are the pieces of the innovation from this administration that we've seen that will continue to be supported if presidential nominee Kamala Harris is elected, whereas if Trump is elected, he will most likely try to defund.
Well, I think you and Mr. Swords may have some stuff to talk about too after the panel. Sure. There has had to have been some changes today. There was a situation we had to deal with and the building had to deal with. So we thank the panel for participating and for your innovation in reforming this panel discussion today. Unfortunately, we do have to now move on with the session, but I do thank you all for coming and explaining how this administration and Democrats have really helped advance innovation, advance the economy, advance small businesses, and help us all grow. So thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We're not done yet. Hold on one quick moment before you all go. Was this, first of all, an amazing panel? Let's thank them all for being here. We've had
Andrew,
some amazing
can I just say
speakers
something
today.
real quick?
What? What?
I didn't get a chance to thank Andrew, who I consider the hardest working man in Southern California Democratic politics. So
Thank you, my friend. So we've heard today what is at stake. The programs that were described up here, the outreach and creating opportunities for small businesses, allowing them to innovate, standing up for small, especially disadvantaged small businesses, women-owned businesses. We have a fight in front of us, and we need your help. So we're going to close on this, in addition to thanking everyone and thank our wonderful moderator as well. Thank you, Mark, for everything. We're going to close with a speaker from the campaign to talk about what you can do in order to help and make sure we get the word out. Because this doesn't happen unless all of us are out there letting people know what is at stake, letting them know that we need to protect our freedoms, our small businesses, and we can only do that by electing a Harris-Walz ticket. So with that, Mr. Garcia, thank you again for coming. You get to be the closing act.
Thank you, Andrew, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be very brief. My name is Richard Garcia. I'm the National Director for Small Business Engagement on the Harris for President campaign based in Wilmington. And so, first of all, obviously want to thank Chair Andrew and the Vice Chair Christine Chin Ryan for their leadership and the board, of course, that's here. And secondly, of course, to Mayor Nirenberg from San Antonio and Secretary Super Department of Labor and the great panel that we were just listening to right now. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done to continue to support small businesses, whether it's at incubators, whether it's through leadership like Main Street Alliance and other organizations that do the great work. So really, the call to action is just to get involved. I'll stick around for any questions. There's a Small Businesses for Harris-Walz Coalition that just launched just last week. And we'd love to get y'all involved. There's plenty of opportunities at the national or at the local level as small business leaders, whether you're a small business owner or a small business supporter. We need your voice as the panelists and the other speakers mentioned before. Kamala Harris is the pro-business candidate in this election. We need growth, we need stability, and we need to continue to build on the success that has so far unleashed 19 million new small businesses since the beginning of the Biden-Harris administration, which is a record. You've never seen that before. And we need to continue to support the investments in bringing in more minority-owned businesses and so into the fold for growth. So with that, I don't know if I pass it back to you, Mr. Chair, or I'll pass it back to Andrew. Thank you so much, everyone.
And in all of our years doing this is the first time we've had the campaign coming and talk to us about what our next steps is. And that shows how everyone is ready to hit the ground to elect Walz-Harris, to make sure that we take back the House, we expand on the Senate. We cannot do that without you. We cannot expand into other states without you. So if any of you are in states where we don't have representation yet, or caucuses, please find one of our region directors or one of us. We'll be happy to talk about that. Also, you will notice we have these lovely, let me do this right, commemorative credentials from attending our Small Business Council. Please take them. As you can see, I have a couple left. So we would love for you to take those back as well and spread the word about what we're doing. Sign up for our Facebook page and our Instagram page, DNC Small Biz, ending with the Z. And thank you all for coming today, and thank you to our executive board. Have a good one. Let's go win this.
If we can get a quick picture of all of our panelists and speakers, stage left.